Not a single person was watching us yet. The string quartet hadn't even unpacked their cellos. My mom was still in her hotel robe upstairs. But somehow, it already felt like I'd ruined her day just by existing. That stupid tie. Deep red, silk, hand-woven, my late grandfather's. Wore it at every major event of his life. His wedding, his retirement party, even my 8th grade graduation because I begged him. He died 6 months ago, and this was my way of honoring him. I told her that. Twice. She dropped it back in the garment bag like she was avoiding fingerprints. Can you at least try not to look like a Walmart manager on our wedding day? Those words. Our wedding day. I stood there, in the guest room of a vineyard estate we couldn't afford, wearing half a tuxedo and all of my patience hanging by a thread. Outside the window, I could already see folding chairs and gold lanterns. Rows and rows of people I hadn't seen in years. Old friends, cousins who still call me Donnie Boy, and that one ex-teacher who never liked me but apparently loves free wine. And there she was, brushing lint off her white rehearsal dress like it was a performance costume. You know, she added, checking her nails, if you had a little more fashion sense, maybe my parents wouldn't keep asking if you're really the one. That one landed differently. It wasn't the first time she said something like that, but it was the first time I didn't laugh it off. Instead, I picked up the tie, folded it with shaking hands, and slid it back into the box. Carefully, like it mattered more than anything in that room. Then I walked downstairs. Quiet. Calm. The kitchen smelled like sage and panic. Her friend Kara was already panicking about wine pairings. Someone was icing cupcakes with edible glitter like the world depended on it. Nobody noticed me. Not yet. Until I grabbed the microphone off the DJ's table and tapped it once, hard. Hey, everyone, I said. Silence. Even the glitter stopped sparkling for a second. I looked right at her, now frozen at the top of the staircase, veil in hand. I won't be needing the aisle today. Turns out, my self-respect arrived first. And I walked out, past the string quartet, past the cupcake towers, past the altar with our initials carved in wood. She didn't follow me. She just laughed. Loud. Mocking. And that's when I knew I did the right thing. I didn't go far. I walked out of that vineyard like a man in a trance, got in my rental car, and drove exactly 8 minutes down the road to a truck stop diner that smelled like burnt bacon and Lysol. Sat at a booth under a buzzing light, still wearing my half-suit. No tie. Just a man with numb fingers, trying to wrap his head around the fact that he'd just walked away from a $27,000 wedding because his fiancée laughed at him like he was a joke on her personal stage. The waitress didn't ask questions, just brought me coffee and a side-eye that said, "You're not the first runaway groom I've seen." I stared at the sugar packets for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe because they were simple, unlike everything else in my life. Predictable. One said sweet and low. That felt ironic. By the time I checked my phone, I had 12 missed calls. 4 from her. 1 from her mother. 7 from someone saved in my contacts as groomsman number 3. I forgot his real name. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I did something I didn't expect. I went back. Not to apologize. Not to fix anything. I don't even know what I was thinking. Maybe I just wanted to see if I imagined it. The laughter, the tone in her voice, the total dismissal of everything I tried to bring to that relationship. I parked in the grass, behind a caterer's van. The ceremony had already been called off. People were standing in little clusters, fake consoling each other like actors after a canceled play. Some of them gave me a look that wasn't pity or confusion. It was annoyance. As if I had ruined their Saturday. I went inside. The building was mostly empty, echoey, like the air had been sucked out of it. And there, hanging on the door of the dressing suite, was her wedding dress. Still zipped in its bag. Untouched. I don't know why, but I opened it. Maybe I thought she'd be inside, crying, regretting everything. But she wasn't. What I found instead was a folded piece of paper inside the bodice. It was a note. Just 4 words. Handwritten in sharp pen strokes. Don't forget the prenup. That hit harder than anything she said in front of the guests. I stood there, holding that scrap of paper like it was radioactive. Was that a joke? A warning? A threat? I don't know. But the worst part? I hadn't forgotten the prenup. I just never wanted to bring it up because it felt cold, like preparing for failure. But apparently, she had been thinking about it all along. I put the note back, zipped the dress up. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. I started to leave, but paused at the vanity where she had left her phone charging. Notifications buzzed like a hornet's nest. I couldn't help myself. I tapped the screen. One message preview caught my eye, from a name I didn't recognize. You good? Can't believe he actually walked. Another one popped up seconds later. Do I still swing by tonight or nah? I left the phone where it was. Didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. Because right then and there, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. This wasn't just about a tie, or a joke, or a ruined ceremony. This was about the fact that I had been fighting for a relationship she'd already emotionally stepped out of. And the worst part? Everyone else already knew. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat with my phone on my lap, the screen black, my thoughts louder than any notification could be. I was too angry to cry, too exhausted to scream. I just kept playing it all over again in my head. Her laughing, the way she looked at that tie like it was a bad smell, the note in her dress, and those messages from the mystery contact who apparently expected to swing by the night our lives were supposed to change forever. Around 2:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. A voicemail. No call, just the recording. I hesitated. Part of me hoped it was her, breaking down, apologizing, finally saying something real. But deep down I knew better. The moment I saw the transcript preview, ugh, he really did it, my gut dropped. I hit play. Her voice was casual, slurred, like she had been drinking. I heard music in the background, people laughing. She was at someone's house, maybe even still at the venue with her friends, who probably treated the ruined wedding like an after-party. So yeah, I guess the idiot really walked. Which, I mean, good for him, right? I didn't even think he had the spine. I thought he'd sulk and then ask me to talk about our feelings again like he always does. She laughed, not a giggle, a real laugh. Honestly, save me the paperwork. Guess I'll just keep the air fryer and call it even. There was a pause. Then a guy's voice, not loud, just close. Muffled. Hey, he said. You okay? Better than okay, she replied. I can finally breathe. End of message. It felt like someone drove a nail straight through the center of my chest. Not because she was with someone. I had already assumed that. It was the tone. It was the way she sounded relieved. Like I had been some burden she was finally free from. I was the thing she had to get over. I didn't call her back. I didn't respond. I just saved the message, not because I ever wanted to hear it again, but because part of me needed proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the coldness, the distance, the way she looked at me like I was holding her back from some Pinterest-worthy future she deserved more than I did. Later that morning, I checked my email, purely out of habit. Mixed in between the RSVP regrets and refund inquiries was one email I almost missed. It was from her dad. Subject line, for what it's worth. Now let me say this. Her dad never liked me. He once called my ceramic business adorable at Thanksgiving. He had a way of shaking my hand like he was checking for weakness in my grip. But the email wasn't what I expected. It was short, just a single paragraph. He wrote, I won't pretend I understand everything, but I saw your face when she joked about you last week at dinner. I should have said something then. I didn't. I'm saying it now. You were right to walk. I stared at that sentence for what felt like a full hour. Right to walk. It didn't undo the voicemail. It didn't erase the note or the texts. But it did something else. It made me realize I had been trying to earn approval in a relationship where I was never meant to feel small in the first place. Still, nothing prepared me for what I'd find next. Because the following day, while I was packing up my things from our apartment, carefully, like I still didn't want to break her stuff even though she'd broken me, her laptop pinged open on the desk. No password, just the screen glowing with a browser window left open. It was a group chat, Facebook Messenger, labeled, The Bride Squad Ring Bottle with Popping Cork. And what I read in there, it changed everything. I didn't mean to read them. That sounds like a lie, but it's the truth. I was halfway through wrapping the set of mixing bowls she always hated, the ones with cartoon lemons that I bought at a garage sale, and she called embarrassing peasantware, when I noticed the open laptop humming on the desk. I don't even know why it was still there. Everything else of hers had been packed up or swept into boxes by her sister earlier that morning. But the screen was open, glowing softly like it was waiting for me. I told myself I'd just close the lid. That was the plan. But then I saw the message preview flash in the corner. I'm just glad it's finally over. Now she can live her real life. I paused. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. One click. That's all it took. The chat thread was called Bride Squad Ring Bottle with Popping Cork, one of those group chats where the emojis are meant to look cute, but they took on a sickly tone now. It had 6 members: Marlene, her 2 bridesmaids, her cousin Lena, her college roommate Shelby, and someone saved only as Mad's Nazar Amulet. Every message was time-stamped from the day of the wedding and the hours that followed. The first message was from Shelby, posted less than 20 minutes after I walked out of the venue. "Shelby, girl, that was ice cold. I literally screamed when you didn't follow him." "Marlene, please. He thought walking out would make me chase him? LOL. I've spent the last year carrying that relationship on my back." Mad's Nazar Amulet. "Honestly, babe, you deserve someone who matches your energy, not a pottery nerd who collects succulents like pets." Lena, still can't believe he brought that tie. Like, what kind of trauma fashion moment was that? They kept going. Message after message. None of them comforting. None of them wondering if I was okay or what had gone wrong. Just giddy relief, like a group of mean girls finally watching the unpopular kid trip in front of the cafeteria. But it was one thread, buried between memes and champagne gifts, that twisted my stomach into a hard, sick knot. Shelby had asked a question I'll never forget. "Shelby, so, are you going to tell Derek about San Diego? Or nah?" I froze. "San Diego? Marlene, LOL. No. What would be the point now?" Mad's Nazar Amulet. He still doesn't know? Babe, loudly crying face savage. "Marlene, it was one weekend. I told myself it was closure. It meant nothing. Besides, if he'd been a little more engaged, maybe I wouldn't have needed it." Lena, closure in someone else's hotel bed, face with tears of joy. There was no more context. No names. No specifics. But I knew enough. She'd gone to San Diego for a conference 3 months earlier. I remember because I helped her pick outfits. I ironed her white blazer while she rehearsed a brand pitch in the mirror. I even drove her to the airport and packed her a granola bar because she said she didn't want to eat airport meat. And while I was watching her plane take off, she was, what? Getting closure? I sat down. Hard. My knees actually gave out. I'm not being dramatic. My body physically reacted to reading what my brain couldn't fully process. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal she shared, laughed about, turned into a group text inside joke, while I was still refunding deposits and explaining to my relatives why there wouldn't be a wedding slideshow after all. I didn't screenshot anything. I didn't need to. Those words are burned into my memory like smoke damage. Even if you paint over it, the stench stays. I closed the laptop, packed the last of my things. I left the lemon bowls on the counter. Before I walked out, I grabbed the planter I had made for her birthday. It was still on the windowsill, dusty, bone dry. The plant inside had withered down to brittle leaves and empty soil. For a second, I almost watered it, but I didn't. I threw it in the trash on my way out. I didn't go back to my place that night. I drove for hours without direction, stopping only when I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I ended up at a gas station on the edge of a highway, chewing on a stale muffin and wondering how long it takes to forget the sound of someone laughing at you in front of 100 people. Apparently longer than 24 hours. The motel I landed in smelled like wet towels and industrial soap, but I didn't care. It was a hiding place. A pause button. I crashed hard and dreamt of nothing. And when I woke up, something was waiting for me. Not a text. Not a call. An actual, physical envelope, tucked under the windshield wiper of my car like a parking ticket from fate. It was plain white. No name, no return address. Just one word written across the front in clean block letters. You should know. For a second, I thought it was some kind of prank. Or worse, that Marlene had sent it herself to twist the knife. But when I tore it open, I found something that instantly made my mouth go dry. Inside was a photo. A printed screenshot of a FaceTime call. Grainy, poorly lit, time-stamped 2 nights before the wedding. Marlene, lying sideways on a hotel bed, face lit by her phone screen, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. And on the other side of the screen, half in frame but unmistakable, was a guy I'd never seen before. Tattooed down his forearm. Shirtless. Smirking. Beneath the photo was a handwritten note. I didn't want to get involved. But she dragged me into this mess when she made me lie to you at the rehearsal dinner. She said you were emotionally fragile and that the truth would wreck you. But you deserve to know. This wasn't just San Diego. It's been going on for over a year. I thought she'd stop when you proposed. She didn't. It was unsigned, but I recognized the handwriting. Shelby, her college roommate. One of the bride squad members who had laughed along like a hyena in the group chat just days ago. I remembered the way she hugged Marlene that day, like she was clinging to royalty. And now she was secretly sliding me evidence like we were in a spy thriller. I reread the note 4 times before I realized my hands were shaking. Over a year. A year. That meant the whole engagement. The venue tours, the tastings, the engagement shoot in the apple orchard she begged me to go to. All of it was done under a lie she had no intention of stopping. But it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was strategy. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a plan, and I was the idiot financing the props. I sat back in the driver's seat and stared at the photo. I zoomed in. There were little details that made me sick to notice. Her nail polish, the same burgundy shade she wore when she held my hand the night I gave her the ring. The same room divider in the background from the Airbnb she said she was staying in alone to clear her head before the wedding. Everything connected like puzzle pieces I hadn't been smart enough to arrange before. I thought about confronting her, marching back into her life and demanding answers. But then I remembered her voice in that voicemail. I can finally breathe. That wasn't the voice of someone who felt guilt. That was the voice of someone who won. In her mind, anyway. But here's the thing about people like Marlene. They think they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. What they don't realize is some of us have stopped playing entirely. We're flipping the board. Because what she didn't know, and what Shelby probably forgot, was that I still had access to the shared drive we created for wedding planning. In it were spreadsheets, contracts, and most importantly, her backup guest list. Full names, emails, contacts, and somewhere on that list was him. The thing about betrayal is that it leaves behind echoes, little unanswered questions that bounce around your skull until you can't tell what's memory and what's paranoia. And one of those questions had been haunting me ever since I found Shelby's note and the screenshot. Who was he? The man on the screen. The shirtless FaceTime phantom. If it had been a one-time thing, maybe I could have shoved it into a box in my brain marked her problem, not mine. But it wasn't. Shelby said it had been a year. That was long enough to deserve a name. So I dug into the wedding documents folder, the one we'd created on our shared Google Drive, thinking I might find some half-buried detail, a receipt, a calendar note, something. But what I found instead was a guest list spreadsheet from 2 months back. It had color-coded tags: family, work friends, college friends, maybes, and one small column labeled, pending RSVP, private. 5 names were listed there. Only one had no last name, just Zeke. No email, no phone number. Just the note. Do not confirm until week of. Zeke. That's not exactly a common name. And suddenly, something clicked. She'd mentioned a Zeke once before, offhandedly, during a fight when I accused her of always keeping me out of her world. She said, "God, Derek, not everything is about you. Sometimes I just want to talk to someone who knew me before all this. Like Zeke. He actually gets it." I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Assumed it was a college friend. Maybe someone gay. Harmless. Now, he wasn't harmless. He was a ghost standing in the ashes of our wedding. I didn't have a number or a full name, but I knew how to search. It didn't take long. A LinkedIn profile buried beneath sponsored posts. A personal blog link on his portfolio. A tab for freelance photography, which made sense. Marlene had said she hated posed photos and wanted candid, artistic shots for the engagement shoot. I just hadn't realized she meant from him. The contact form on his site was still live. I stared at the blank message box for 10 straight minutes before typing. My first draft was angry, venomous, really. I deleted it. My second attempt was sarcastic, almost mocking. Deleted that too. What I ended up writing wasn't smart, or powerful, or even well-worded. It was just honest. Zeke, I don't know if you're the guy from the screenshot I was sent. But if you are, I just want to know the truth. No yelling. No drama. Just the truth. Did you know she was engaged? Did you know the wedding was days away? I'm not reaching out to ruin anything. I'm reaching out because she already ruined it, and I need to know how deep the lie goes. I didn't expect an answer. I assumed the message would vanish into some inbox he never checked. But the reply came just 4 hours later. I knew about the engagement. She said it wasn't real, that it was for show, for her parents, for stability, for optics. She told me she'd end it after the wedding. We were supposed to talk after her obligations were over. She said you were a good guy, but too soft. That you'd get over it. I believed her. Until now. He included a screenshot of a message from Marlene, dated 2 days before the ceremony. Don't worry. I'll get through Saturday, smile for the cameras, then we'll be free. Promise. I'm not choosing comfort over connection ever again. I read that line 5 times. Comfort over connection. That's what I was to her. Comfort. Like a weighted blanket. A mug of soup. A backup plan. But the part that truly broke me wasn't her lie. It was that he had been lied to as well. Zeke hadn't crashed my life like some homewrecker with bad intentions. He'd been fed the same poison I had, just in a different cup. She kept him close, kept me closer, and lied to both of us with a straight face. And as I was processing that, another email came through, not from Zeke. It was from someone I didn't know. A Gmail address, no name, just the subject line. You don't know me, but I know what she did to you. Inside was a single line. Marlene did this to someone else before. If you want to understand how deep it goes, meet me tomorrow. 2 p.m., corner booth at Molly's Cafe. Bring nothing but questions. Molly's Cafe wasn't the kind of place that held secrets. It was bright, overly decorated with fake ivy and mismatched coffee mugs, and played 2000s indie rock at a volume just slightly too loud to call intimate. I almost didn't go. That email, that eerie, anonymous promise, felt too dramatic, too cinematic. I had convinced myself by that morning it was a prank. Maybe one of Marlene's friends messing with me. Maybe even her, trying to lure me out so she could reclaim the narrative, as she liked to say. But I went anyway. Something about the wording haunted me. She did this to someone else before. When I walked in, the cafe was half full. Students in headphones, 2 elderly women in sun hats playing cards near the window. The waitress pointed toward the back where the booths were. I scanned quickly, then stopped. She looked up before I even reached the table, like she'd been watching the door the whole time. Late 30s, early 40s maybe. Pale gray sweater, no makeup, hair pulled into a half-hearted bun. Not what I expected. She stood up when I approached, extended her hand. I'm Elise, she said quietly. The name didn't register right away. Not until we sat down, and she pulled a worn leather wallet from her purse, flipping it open like a badge. Inside was a folded photograph, one of those cheap photo booth strips, slightly faded. Marlene, younger, no less dangerous. Arms around a guy I didn't recognize. A guy who looked like he'd never seen a betrayal coming in his life. That was my brother, Elise said. His name was Jonah. The words dropped like stone into a still lake. I didn't speak. I just watched her expression shift, tighten, not into grief, but something heavier. She wasn't here to mourn. She was here to warn. 3 years ago, she continued, he met Marlene at a company retreat in Oregon. She was consulting for a client his firm was working with. They started talking, and suddenly he was different. Obsessed. Like she could do no wrong. My family adored her, at first. She was charismatic, attentive, always knew exactly what to say. But then things got strange. He started withdrawing from us. Sold his condo to get liquid for their future. Quit his job to support her dreams. He gave her everything, and she gave him nothing but borrowed time. I leaned forward. My pulse was thudding. She never intended to stay with him, Elise said, voice low. She told him she needed space for a few weeks, that she'd come back. But while he was waiting, she was in Tahoe with someone else. And when he found out, he didn't take it well. Her hands shook as she sipped her tea. He left a note. Said he felt like he'd been erased. That his love had been used like a ladder to somewhere he'd never be allowed to climb. We found out later she had promised him marriage, children, a future, all while seeing 2 other men in different cities. I sat back, nauseous, cold. I wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of her story flattened every word before it left my throat. Elise pulled something else from her purse, an envelope. She slid it across the table. I kept these. I didn't know what to do with them until now. Inside were printed emails. Dozens. Some from Jonah to Marlene, some from her to him. One stuck out immediately. She'd sent it just days before his death. I know this hurts, but sometimes love isn't enough. You were a beautiful chapter in my life, but you were never the ending. You're the comfort I needed before I found who I really am. I had seen those words before, almost word for word. She'd said the same thing to me in a letter she left on my kitchen table after I walked out of the wedding, just with my name swapped in. A chill spread down my back. She has a pattern, Elise said. She finds kind people, devoted ones, people she can shape like wet clay. She pulls them into her story, uses them to feel desired, then discards them when they get too close to seeing her unmasked. You weren't the first, and I doubt you'll be the last. I stared at the photo again, her smile frozen in time, polished and practiced. I thought I knew her. I didn't even know what she was capable of. Elise reached into her pocket one last time and placed a flash drive on the table. I have the rest. Messages, voicemails, proof she knew what she was doing. Use it, or don't. But someone needs to see her for what she is. I left that cafe with a weight I hadn't carried before. Not just heartbreak, not just betrayal, but a terrifying new reality. What if none of it, the engagement, the late-night talks, the laughter, was ever real? What if I'd been cast in a story she wrote just to fill time until her next chapter? And as I got into my car, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. Just 3 words. You've gone too far. That message, you've gone too far, didn't scare me. Not anymore. It didn't even make me angry. It made me tired. Tired in a way that sits in your bones and doesn't leave, not even after sleep. Because by then, I had seen everything I needed to. The truth wasn't just ugly, it was rehearsed, refined, deployed like a weapon. And I had been the easiest target in the room because I wanted it to be real. But for the first time in months, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't desperate for closure or spinning in loops wondering what I did wrong. I knew now that I had been a prop in someone else's illusion, and stepping out of that role might have been the first honest act I'd made in years. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't post the voicemails or publish screenshots. I didn't expose her online like so many people told me to do after I shared the story. Because the truth is, I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. And silence, in its own way, is louder than any confession screamed into the void. A week later, I did something small but important. I pulled out the last of the clay I hadn't touched in months. The good stuff. The kind I save for real pieces, not trial runs or filler inventory. I cleared the dust off my wheel. I opened all the windows in my workshop, even though it was still cold out, and I let the air sting my lungs. I started shaping without thinking. No plan, no sketch, just hands and motion and clay. And what came out of that session wasn't perfect. In fact, it was lopsided and weird and had a chip in the rim I couldn't fix, but I kept it. It sits on my shelf now. Not for sale, not for display, just a reminder. I moved out of the apartment we shared. Got a new one on the other side of town. Smaller, but lighter somehow. The kind of place where you wake up and don't feel like you're living inside someone else's Pinterest board. I reconnected with people I'd pushed away, my brother, a couple of old friends I'd ghosted during the engagement planning chaos. One of them, Rachel, had always told me Marlene smiled like she was hiding something. We laughed over coffee about how she was more right than she ever wanted to be. And maybe, just maybe, something is starting to grow there. Slow, careful, honest. As for Marlene, I don't know where she is now. I don't check. I don't search her name. I don't ask around. I left that theater, and I have no intention of buying another ticket to a show I've already survived. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret standing up, walking away, canceling a wedding in front of family, friends, and catered hors d'oeuvres. And to be honest, for a long time I did. Regret is loud at first, it echoes. But eventually, peace comes in like a tide and washes over the noise. Because now I can tell you, with full honesty, that there's something far worse than heartbreak. Settling for someone who laughs at the parts of you you're still learning to love. I may have walked away from a wedding, but I didn't walk away from love. I walked toward it, the real kind. The kind that starts with yourself. The kind that doesn't make you feel like a backup plan or a punchline. And if you're listening to this, if you're in a place where someone makes you feel small, replaceable, mocked behind your back, I hope you remember this. You're allowed to leave the stage before the act is over. You're allowed to stop being the story someone else is telling. I did.